In today's video, I'm going to teach you how to build a deck in Weiss Schwarz. And we've all come across it, right? I think the most daunting part about any card game is probably building a deck, especially when it comes to Weiss Schwarz. When you're first learning it, it seems so complicated and everyone's just going to ask like, oh, can someone build a deck for me? Or you try to copy someone else's deck one for one. But it's actually a lot simpler than you think it is, and I'm going to explain to you why. The website that I actually recommend you using is a website called Encore Decks, and you could use it to build any deck you want, right? So you go to Deck Builder. I don't know if you haven't made an account. Let's say you go to Adventure Time, for example, and that's the set that you want to make. Then you'll just add the cards here. It'll actually tally up how many cards are in your deck, how many levels of each thing, how many of each event, climaxes, and whatnot. And in the case that if you have like more complicated decks, like let's just say Fate, for example, and the Fate 0 deck could be used with Heaven's Feel, Heaven Feels 2, and the 2 Unlimited Blade Works. You could check off all those boxes, and you could build a deck using all those sets as well. And it's actually pretty handy as well too, because it lets you check off categories like, you know, certain colors, if you want to just work on your level zeros first, the type of card that you want to look into, like you could type the name in and you could kind of sort it out however you want in regards to like what kind of card it is that you want to look at while you're doing it. And it actually on the screen, it actually shows you what are the effects of the cards, the soul, the cost, the color, the level. And then once you actually finish building your deck, you actually just see a visual of it. And they actually give you like a breakdown on, you know, the amount of type of colors you have in your deck in regards to, it actually sorts through level 0, level 1, level 2, level 3, and the climaxes in your deck. It gives you like a more visual way of actually seeing your deck on screen while you're making it. And I'm going to break down why it's actually a lot simpler to build a Weiss Schwarz deck than you think it is. And the main reason behind it is because in every Weiss Schwarz deck, you're limited to 50 cards. You can't have more than that. You can't have less than that. So you need exactly 50 cards in your deck. And with that structure in mind, you also have to realize technically you only have to choose 42 cards, because out of those 50 cards, 8 of them will always be climaxes. You could technically run less than 8 climaxes, but why would you ever? This is the only way pretty much that you could completely negate damage, and 8 is the maximum that you could run. That's why you would always run 8. You could run 5 maybe, but like why would you want to do that? And then once we're past that, you have to remember at most you could only run 4 copies of each card, and that's outside of whatever ban list, right? Like I think the level 3 Kurumi you can only run 2, but that's outside of ban list. Most cards you can only run a maximum of 4. So you just have to remember that while you're building as well. And then next, what you're gonna do when you're building your deck is you have to kind of remember the structure of the deck. So remember, there's gonna be 8 climaxes, and typically most people run between around 15 to around 18 level zeros, and then everything in between kind of fluxes, right? So remember the number of around 15 to 18 level zeros. But how do we choose how we're going to build the deck? And we're going to build our deck revolving around the characters that we want to play, like a main, for example. So what we're going to do is I'm going to use Fate Grand Order as an example, right? So first, our level 3 is going to be our main character, right? So that's going to be like our, you know, big dick damage. So and that's the end game that we're aiming for. So what we're going to do to start building our deck around him is we're going to choose level 3. And then let me just type Gilgamesh in. So there's 2 level 3. So technically, you know, most of the time you probably would run around like 3 to 4. Let's just say we're running 4 of each of the Gilgameshes, so that is already 8 characters. And then each of these Gilgameshes, you'll see that, you know, their climax combo is going to be the Will of Uruk to continue fighting. So automatically we know that we're going to run Will of Uruk to continue fighting. So let me check off the level 3 first, if I could find it. There you go. So we're going to run 4 of this climax. And of course, this isn't like a one-size-fits-all thing, but let's just say if both my level 3s are greens, I could technically just not mix the color, and I could just build a deck revolving around the same color. So the next Gilgamesh Climax that I would have would be Recollections Through Battle. So I would also run 4 of it as well too. I think you could mix Climaxes, but in general, since you have other cards that interact with it, you want to run 4 copies of the same Climax because you want to be able to have that card in your hand when possible to combine them together. And in this case, I would try to look for a card that interacts with Recollections Through Battle if possible, right? So I believe, I already know, it's the Battle Where Sand Swirls card. So this card is another Climax combo. It's a level 1. Aside from your level 3, your other interaction will most likely be a level 0 or a level 1 that interacts with it. So in this case, if I had Recollections Through Battle in my Climax area and I have 2 or more Chaldea or Babylonia characters, I could draw 2 cards and then choose 1 card in my hand and put it into my waiting room. So I would run like, I don't know, minimum of like 2 to 3 copies depending on how good this card is and depending on the rest of my deck. So you'll kind of see right off the bat the fact that you're running 8 Climaxes, around like 8 of the level 3s, just depending on that is your main character. You already have almost like close to half of your deck filled just from because of the fact of the Climax combo interaction, as well as the level 3 character that you're choosing to play. And then everything else afterwards is kind of like depends on the little nuances depending on your actual deck building itself, right? But once you have this basic structure down, it's pretty easy. So another way you could possibly build this Gilgamesh deck would be like, okay, so if I already know his only one of the level 3s interact with one of the Climaxes, right? The Will of Uruk to continue fighting. Another path I could have went is if I don't have a lot of Gilgamesh support cards, I could always not run King Who Leads His People who doesn't have a Climax combo interaction. So that would eliminate these 2 cards, and I would just find a different color level 3 that I want to run that could kind of, mesh with a deck that I want to build. But for example purposes, we'll just kind of stick with this green Gilgamesh themed deck. So after we chose, our Climax combos and the cards that interact with, what happens next, right? So remember when I said that normally you run around 15, between like 14, 15 to 18 level 0s. So next you're going to choose characters, level 0, and then you're going to choose a color. Most likely you're going to choose green because the characters that you have so far are all green, so you would want, green characters. You could always not run green characters, but, if you're just learning how to build the deck, that's probably how I would probably suggest it. And then, if I'm playing a Gilgamesh deck, then I'm most likely going to look towards, what Gilgamesh cards I'm going to run. So if we're looking at level 0s, most likely we're going to run like, 4 copies of this, whatever support cards you want to run, right? So in the case that you run into like Souvenirs for Travelers, for example, and this Gilgamesh card, not this card, the Souvenirs for Travelers. So in this case, this Gilgamesh card has interaction with a different card, which is Weiss King's Holy Grail. Then you already know, okay, I'm gonna play Weiss King's Holy Grail most likely, and I believe that's an event card, so we'll go there. And then we'll uncheck level 0. Let's go for events. Weiss King's Holy Grail. Not level 0. And then you'll know, okay, if I'm going to run this card with interaction with the other one, then I'm going to run like, 2 or 3 copies of that. And then you'll kind of build your deck from there. And then you realize you already have like, pretty much 30 to 40 cards to begin with. And then you'll work your way up to like level 1. And then again, since we're running Gilgamesh cards, we're going to look at, okay, what level 1 Gilgamesh cards are there, and then, you'll add that. And then slowly you'll kind of work your way around the deck, and then you'll kind of tweak it as you go. The amount of actual level 1s and level 2s kind of fluxes between what kind of deck you'll run, and you'll kind of just have to play around with it and test your decks as you go. Because it's kind of hard to judge it based on, every deck kind of runs differently. But let's just say, for example, we go to level 1 and we go to characters. Again, the easiest way, especially if you're new, you're probably better off just running single colors. And, you know, you'll see that, okay, there's like the level 1 Kingu, for example, that gives, 500 power to each of my other characters or Babylonia. And then it, has the auto encore as well, too. Seems pretty good. Since all these characters are Babylonia characters, they're all going to be able to get the buff. So why wouldn't I run 4 copies of it, right? And then, we have another level 1 that interacts with Gilgamesh cards as well, too. So this Siduri, for example, right? She interacts with the Wise King's Returned. So why would I not run? So then we'll run 4 copies of the Wise King Returns. And then since that, I see that this card interacts with something called Wise King Returns from the Underworld. Let's go look at that to see what level that is. And then we'll see that it's a level 2. So since she interacts with that, so why wouldn't I run 4 copies of it? And then as you realize, I already have 44 cards in my deck. And then the rest of it, you just kind of play around with it as you go. But you'll kind of see what I mean by it's not that hard to build a Weiss Schwarz deck. I mean, that's given, like, we don't talk about if it's competitive or it's meta or not, right? But when you're first starting off playing the game, you just want to have fun. And a lot of it, I know a lot of people feel pressured that the game already feels hard to learn to begin with. And then you kind of couple that on top of like, oh man, I don't even know how to build a deck. And, you feel like you got to place the most meta deck or whatever it is. Don't worry about playing what's meta. Worry about first having fun, the most important part. Choose your favorite characters and then build your deck around your favorite characters. And then going back to, how I built my other deck, I really, really like Reagan. I like Mob Psycho. So I'm going to build my deck around Reagan. And, his, level 3 cards are going to be comboing with It's Okay to Run Away. So I'm going to run 4 copies of that. I'm going to run 3 to 4 copies of this. And then his other climax combo, I think, is his level 1. Is actually, let me find it. It's actually his level 0, the Adult Tactics. So you're going to run 4 of that. And then 4 of those to combo with his, Esper Kick. So already off the bat, you have 4, 4, 4, 4. You have 16 cards that are already locked into your deck. And then that's not to mention, most likely when you're running a theme deck, you're going to run like 3 to 4 copies of another one of his level 3s anyways. In this case, I think I ran 2 or 3 copies of Accepting Clients' Requests. And then for the Petite Reagan, I think I ran 2 copies of that. And then you'll kind of see like certain cards, if you mix colors, there's certain interactions that, play as well too. You have different colors. So in this case, in the Mob deck, in the Reagan deck, if I run Gratitude towards his master, it also combos with It's Okay to Run Away. So in this case, I would run like, between 2 to 4 copies of him as well too. And then everything else you'll kind of notice, like most of the time it combos with a certain type of character or a certain trait. Like in the case that, calling for reinforcements also combos with Mob Kageyama. You'll see these certain synergies. So once you have a playset of these cards, and most of the time, certain characters interact with other type of characters. Like the bad guys will normally interact with the bad guys. In this case, Reagan and Mob would interact with each other in the deck. Same for when you're building the Gilgamesh deck, for example. Gilgamesh would interact with Siduri because it's just how the story works. She's the servant of Gilgamesh, which is why they have a combo together. And you'll see that kind of trait and, those patterns in almost every sort of Weiss set. And I'll give one more example as well too. And I'm just choosing decks that I know and I'm building. Let's say the King of All Creation Archer, right? So this Gilgamesh is a level 3. I'll run 4 copies of it. And what does he need? He needs Sword of Rupture Ea. So Sword... Let me uncheck this. Not level 3. Sword Rupture Ea. So I need 4 copies of that. And I know in this case, the other Gilgamesh is, I believe, Gate of Babylon. If I could find it. All right, great. So I finally found it. So I typed Gate of Babylon in. So I'll run like 4 copies of these, right? Because it also combines with the Climax card, Gate of Babylon. So you already know out of your 50 card deck, you already have 16 cards just based on the Climax alone. And in this case, I have both yellow and red, right? So when I look for level 0 cards, which I'm going to run another 15 cards, so that are 15 to 17 cards. So that already brings me to 30 something cards just from that alone. And then if we look at, Gilgamesh cards, which are most likely going to be yellow and red because that's just how Weiss works, right? So they're going to be yellow and red. You see all these different type of Gilgamesh cards. Of course, like if you look at, we're going to start looking at level 0s first. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You already know like what you're going to choose, right? And that at the end of the day, it also depends on preference as well too. Once you start playing the game a little bit more, you'll kind of get a feel as to what cards are good, what cards are not as good, depending on what you personally prefer. So in the case that, let's just say I found a level 0 that all my other Gilgamesh or Archer cards, which is all my cards that I want to play, get 500 attack power. So he's going to be a really, really good support for all my Gilgameshes. So why wouldn't I run 4 copies of him, right? And then we look at what other cards, like this is just like a basic beater card, 3k. If you're really lazy and you don't really feel like building around, okay, let's say I want to run 4, that's already 9 level 0s. Battle of Legend. If a yellow card's in my Climax, they get +1, so sure, why not? Or if you want to mix it around, you could like do 2/2 of this. There's like a 4k beater with like a downside if I reveal a Climax, so we could do 2 of this, and then let's see, Petit Gilgamesh, I could run like 1 or 2 for the memes. So that's already 17, right? And then we're gonna look at level 1 next. So we have no level 1 characters. We already know, okay, Endless Blades, which I already know is a card that I want in my deck, so I'm gonna run 4 Endless Blades. Is this only yellow? Oh, yellow and red. So the thing about Gilgamesh himself is that some of his cards are called Archer cards. So it's a little bit different as well too. But you kind of get the idea that like at this point, you already have close to 40 cards in your deck. And then let's look. So let's look at level 1. What kind of Archer cards for level 1? So in the case of Gilgamesh, I would run Gilgamesh Archer cards. So you have King of Kings Archers, Full of Conceit. You have like all these different type of cards, and all these little nuances are kind of like up to your personal preference. If I want to run the Archer Gilgamesh, or if I want to run, Chad Gilgamesh or whatever it is, as long as I have my core, your core is going to be your 8 Climaxes and your level 3s and your other cards that interact with the Climax, like the Gate of Babylon, for example. And again, normally it would be 1 or 2 cards that interact with your Climaxes, and you'll just kind of look through your cards in order to find them. I kind of wish actually you could look through the text and find what cards interact with it, but most of the time I don't think there's a function like that. You would probably just have to look through them individually. So if you have like a playset while you're opening the cards, you kind of want to just like look through what each card does, and it's a little bit more narrowed down because the interaction normally would be with the same color. And the sets aren't really that big, so you shouldn't really have that hard of a time. In this case, it's a little bit harder with Fate Zero just because you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different sets that you could build this Gilgamesh deck from. But yeah, I hope this helped in kind of clarifying that it's not really that complicated to build Weiss Schwarz decks. And it's very daunting, but once you kind of get started and you get the concept that there's a core of your deck, which is going to be your Climaxes, and then the cards that interact with your Climaxes most likely will be 1 of your level 3s, if not 2 of your level 3s, and then 1 other card from the other levels that interact with your Climaxes. Once you get that core down, you'll realize the rest of your deck building is really up to preference. And the most important part is just have fun. Don't worry about what's meta. Don't worry about like, oh, I'm going to play the most optimal or whatever it is, right? Especially if you're just starting. The most important part is you're choosing the anime series that you're a fan of, and you're choosing the characters that you really like, and then build your deck around that. And then once you play a couple games, you realize, hey, you know what? when I draw this card, it's kind of a dead hand, or there's just some things that, are they feel kind of useless once I play them. And then once you get a feel of that, you'll realize, hey, I just have to pull out these two cards, put another two copies of this, or like kind of shift things around, and then you'll realize it's not as bad as you think it is. But yeah, I hope this helped. Thank you for watching, and if you want to see more content like this about actually playing the game, feel free to let me know and I'll make more videos about it. As for like, actually learning how to play the game, they actually have a tutorial on the official Weiss channel that teaches you how to play the game. Of course, it doesn't go over like small nuances or whatnot, but there's other content creators out there that have done tutorials about it. So what I recommend is, if you don't know how to play the game yet, I recommend you watch the official tutorial, which is like 6 minutes, 5-6 minutes long. Use that as a basis of learning the game, and then you want to supplement that by playing like an actual game with a trial deck with a friend if you have any, or on Discord, or watching those YouTube tutorials as well too. And then when you combine that knowledge together on top of playing an actual game and someone running you through it, then you'll realize the game is very, very easy. I actually found deck building a lot easier than actually playing the game itself for some odd reason. But that was just me. But yeah, just get out there, play the game, just have fun. I think it's a really, really cool game. When it comes to Weiss compared to other card games that I played, I felt like Weiss was very fun to me because it did not feel one-sided in a way where someone could just make a meta deck and just kind of shut you down. Regardless of what kind of deck that you make, you could still have fun, and no one can really build a deck that could shut you out of having fun, if that makes any sense. All right, thank you. Have a great day.